Hi and welcome to another Carpenter tutoring tutorial. I'm Amy and today we are going to talk about turning word problems into numerical expressions when we have to use grouping symbols in order to accurately represent that relationship. We talked in a previous video about identifying multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction in word problems, but we haven't had a chance to take a look at using grouping symbols in those word problems yet, so that's exactly what we're going to focus on today. There are two ways that you're likely to see grouping symbols indicated in a word problem. The first way is by asking for the quantity of something. Saying the quantity is a common way to show that we need to put parentheses or other grouping symbols around the expression that comes after the quantity. So for example, if I said something like the quantity of x plus 7, then I would write the quantity or parentheses of x plus 7, putting x plus 7 inside those parentheses. Another way that we're likely to see parentheses or grouping symbols indicated in word problems is by asking for an order of mathematical events that goes against order of operations. So for example, if a word problem is telling us to add or subtract values first and then multiply or divide, because multiplication and division should come first in order of operations, we'll need to use grouping symbols like parentheses in order to dictate that the addition or subtraction should actually come first. So now that we know the situations where we're likely to see grouping symbols required, let's take a look at examples of each and see how they work out on paper. We'll take a look at the left side first. So this tells us to multiply a number by the quantity 5 increased by x. There's quite a bit to unpack here, so we'll go step by step. First, I see multiply, so I know at some point during this problem, I'll be doing multiplication. Then our next phrase is a number. I don't know what that number is, so I'm going to have to use a variable to represent this question mark of a value. You can choose any variable you want to. I feel like using an m for now. All right, so I'm going to multiply m by the quantity. All right, quantity tells me to put parentheses around whatever comes next. So I know I'm starting parentheses here. Then I hear 5. Luckily, not too difficult to translate. That's just going to stay a 5. Increased by, well, increasing is another way of asking for addition. So this is really asking for plus. And then increased by x. X is another variable whose value we don't know, so we'll have to just keep it as x. Now that I'm done describing what the quantity is, the quantity was 5 increased by x, I can close out the parentheses that I opened. If we write this out based on the order of events in the word problem, we'll get multiplied m by the quantity 5 plus x. You can see that this doesn't quite work out. We've got all the parts, but for an appropriate mathematical representation, sometimes we have to change the order from the order that we had in word form. So what I'll need to do here is actually switch the m and the multiplication so that I'm getting m first and then multiplication between m and the quantity. Now that we've corrected that order, I do see that I don't actually need the multiplication symbol between m and the quantity because I can just put m as a variable right up against that quantity and use it as a coefficient. So I can write this as m times the quantity 5 plus x. Again, the element of this problem that let us know we were going to have to use parentheses was asking for the quantity. The quantity of 5 increased by x had to be placed inside parentheses. Now let's take a look at our second example. This problem tells us to increase a number by 17 and then divide by 3. We'll walk through step by step again and see what each of these words translates to in a mathematical representation. Increase generally tells me to do addition, so I will take this as addition. So increase a number. I don't know what that number is, so I'll use another variable. I'll use z this time. So increase z by 17. So 17 is going to stay the same. And then, so this is telling me the order of events. After I increase z by 17, that is when I have to do the next step. So I know that this part has to come first. All right, so I'll add z and 17 first, and then I have to divide by 3. That means this division has to happen second. So if I just write this expression in the order that we saw in our word problem, of course, changing the order of z and the addition to make a valid addition problem, I'll have z plus 17 divided by 3. If I leave it like this though, order of operations tells me that the first thing I would have to do would be dividing 17 by 3, because when we're simplifying expressions, division happens before addition does. But that doesn't match the scenario that we have in the word problem. We want to do the addition first and then follow up with the division. Because the order that the problem calls for is different than the order that order of operations would provide, we have to include grouping symbols to change up that order. So I know that I want the addition to happen first. That means that I'll have to put z plus 17 in parentheses to guarantee that it happens first, and then we can divide by 3. Another way that we could express this would be z plus 17 divided by 3 or over 3. In this case, we don't actually see those grouping symbols represented, but they are there. Anytime that you have a multi-term value in either the numerator or the denominator of a fraction, that multi-term value is actually trapped inside parentheses or whatever grouping symbols you like to use. Even if we write this as a fraction, we still have the implied first step of handling the numerator because of those implied parentheses, and only after we do that part would we move on to the division by 3. Our big signal in this problem that we needed to use parentheses was the and then. Now you may not see the exact phrase and then in your word problems, but what we're looking out for is any dictated order in the word description that goes against order of operations. If you have to do addition or subtraction first before multiplication or division in order to keep the same order of events as the word problem, that's an indication that you'll need to use grouping symbols around the first step. Well, I hope it's been helpful to go through a couple examples of times when we'll need to use parentheses when changing word descriptions into mathematical expressions or equations. As always, if you have any questions or other topics that you'd like to see discussed, please let me know down in the comments. If you enjoy our content, I hope you'll consider liking or subscribing to our channel. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me, and I'll catch you next time.